Cypress Fairbanks Independent School District presents our on-demand video professional development series. In this video series, we will be discussing the aspects of a positive culture in a well-run classroom. A well-run classroom is characterized by clear expectations, engaging and differentiated instruction, effective management, active student involvement, and of course, strong relationships. It is an environment where both students and teachers thrive, fostering a love for learning and personal growth. Now, we understand what a positive culture and a well run classroom looks like. The challenge for us as educators then becomes how? How do we cultivate it? Our professional development on demand series will cover that topic in two parts. In part one, we will discuss classroom norms and social contracts. And in part two, we will discuss empowering students. This is part one, cultivating norms and the power of social contracts. To begin, think about your favorite sport or your favorite game to play. Pick 3 rules that you would take away from that sport or game. How would the game be different? Would it be easier or harder to play? More or less enjoyable? And why? Think of classes that you have been in that you have enjoyed being a part of. And think about those that you were uncomfortable being in. What were the reasons or things about that class that made it enjoyable? And what were the things that made that class uncomfortable? Through participating in games, groups can begin to understand that the nature of a game or activity and how it's enjoyed are tied to its norms. For example, Monopoly wouldn't be Monopoly without the rules and norms that give it a framework and help define its identity. Having students participate in creating their own game with norms emphasizes that behaviors like participation, learning, and respect are important because they are proactively providing clarity, direction, and an environment of engagement. When I was growing up, my mom and my aunt would often exchange board games between my siblings and my cousins. The only problem was the games that came from my cousin's house never had the rules still left in the boxes. So we just made up our own rules. Has that ever happened to you? You were trying the best to play a game or complete a task even, and you wanted to win or you wanted to complete the task accurately, but you didn't know how. You couldn't meet the expectations even though you wanted to. And you couldn't meet those expectations because you didn't know what they were. In this section, we'll be discussing how to cultivate norms for your classroom. What norms would you like to see in your classroom? What do you value in the classroom? And more importantly, how do your students know? For example, if you value kindness, how are you teaching students how to be kind? How do students learn this behavior from you? Class norms are essential in educational settings because they establish a structured, predictable environment conducive to learning. There are several reasons why class norms are beneficial. Here's one. They promote positive behavior. Clearly defined norms help students understand expected behaviors, promoting respect, responsibility, and cooperation. This helps minimize disruptive behavior and creates a more harmonious classroom atmosphere. Norms create a safe learning environment when students know what is expected of them and others, they feel safer and more secure. This psychological safety is crucial for students to take academic risks, engage in discussions, and express their ideas without fear of ridicule or judgment. Norms enhance academic engagement. Consistent norms help maintain focus and engagement in classroom activities. They help develop social and emotional skills. Adhering to class norms requires students to practice self regulation, empathy, and effective communication. These are skills that are vital for their overall development and are transferable to other aspects of their lives. And finally, norms support effective classroom management. For teachers, having a set of norms simplifies the management of the classroom. It allows for clear guidelines and procedures, making it easier to address issues promptly and consistently. Class norms are vital for creating a structured, respectful, inclusive learning environment that supports both academic and personal growth. They help students manage behavior, promote engagement, and build a positive classroom community where all students can thrive. Now, you could just tell your students, hey, these are the classroom norms, these are the classroom rules. Or you could have an activity that would increase the opportunity for students to have buy in. For example, just like we did at the beginning of this video, you could have your students think of a sport and have them remove 3 rules. And then facilitate a discussion about rules and why they're important to make the game enjoyable and really equal for all. Another idea for facilitating classroom norm development is to show a picture like the one on the video. Ask your students, what did they think the artist intended for them to see? Make a point that you can't always be sure what you're seeing and hearing is the same for everybody. And so it's so important to be clear about how we show up. Another idea would be to break students into groups and have them create their own game with rules that the group agrees upon. You could tie those rules in with your class norms and how important it is that we understand and are clear about how to show up and how to play the game. Now that we've established our classroom norms, we want to ensure that that students have buy-in and adhere to them throughout the school year. One way we can do that is through the power of social contracts. Look at chances to remind your students that expectations are universal and not personal. Learning content and how to behave appropriately is a team sport. A social contract subtly tells students that everyone is meeting the expectations. This sends a message to students saying, let me see you looking like a Copeland Colt. Or here at Libi, we soar and show respect. Social contracts reinforce that our expectations are a group and not a personal criteria. Expectations are part of being here. It's just not my personal feelings about you. Yes, we teach our content. We're licensed to do so. We follow school and district policy. We agree to prime directives of our principals. We follow the TEKS. But what do you stand for? What do you value? What do your students learn from working with you that goes beyond content? What life lessons, character lessons, how to be a better human lessons stay with them long after their time with you is done? Have you ever noticed that if you aren't clear with students about expected behaviors, other behaviors show up? It's not just kids, it's adults. Adults the same way. In the absence of rules, we show up how we want. And a lot of times this is not productive. One way we support our students as learners and in life is to be clear about the expectations of how they should behave in your class. In a bustling eighth grade classroom, Ms. Rodriguez gathers her students on the first day of school. She began by asking each student to share one thing they valued in a classroom. As ideas flowed, the class collectively decided on the importance of respect, active listening, and kindness. Ms. Rodriguez, with the students' input, crafted a classroom social contract on a large poster. Ms. Rodriguez guided the language of the contract to align with the PBIS matrix. Throughout the year, the social contract became a daily reference point. One day, during a spirited class discussion, Jake raised his hand and reminded his classmates about the agreements to listen without interrupting. The class took a moment to reflect, and the discussion continued more thoughtfully. This anecdote highlights how a shared understanding, established at the beginning of the year, guided the class through challenges and created positive and collaborative learning environment. Our own lack of clarity might be the reason we aren't seeing the outcomes we want. For example, we might be telling our students to study hard or be quiet, and they come back and argue with us and say, I am studying hard. I am being quiet. Perhaps our expectations aren't specific enough, and they don't quite understand how it looks, sounds, and feels. Our expectations must be specific, easy to comprehend, and apply to all. And our expectations also must be consistently reinforced. We can create a social contract with our students to define and be clear about how we show up in our classroom. This is the holy grail for students and for teachers. We ask students to make thousands of decisions a day. If we want them to make the right decision, then it's important that they have a quick, readily available example of how to behave, what the right thing to do is. And they don't have to think about where to put their backpacks or how to leave the room or how to enter the room. This saves space for learning and creativity. Students don't have to think about these things because they're so ingrained, so normal, so second nature to them. Being clear saves an enormous amount of time in repeating yourself and reassures the class that there is consistency, justice, and structure to the lessons we teach. Having a social contract and supporting your norms preempts poor behavior, and it tells kids what they should do instead of what they shouldn't. They also support our PBIS matrix and demonstrate our expectations. They teach good habits, which become part of character, and it frees up thinking space for better things. When writing social contracts, be sure to revisit the behavioral expectations identified in your matrix. Integrate the behavioral expectations from the PBIS matrix directly onto that classroom contract. We should specifically be practicing the behaviors we want to see, and by integrating the PBIS matrix into our classroom contract, we can create a positive and visible framework for managing behavior. This approach promotes a shared understanding of expectations and provides a structured foundation for creating a positive and respectful learning environment. Each expectation should be explicitly mentioned in the contract, and we tailor the classroom contract and the PBIS matrix to specific needs and dynamics of your classroom. Consider involving the students in the process to enhance buy-in. Because this is a contract, signing it shows agreement. This is a proactive agreement of how we show up every day. In this video, we have discussed how to create and cultivate a positive classroom for your students. In this video, we've talked about establishing clear expectations and norms, where you as the teacher establishes and consistently enforces clear rules and procedures from the beginning. We can call these our norms. Students understand what is expected of them in terms of behavior, participation, and academic performance. In creating and establishing norms and a social contract, we create a positive classroom environment where there's a strong sense of community and mutual respect. Students feel comfortable expressing their ideas and taking academic risks. Creating norms and reinforcing that social contract helps with your effective classroom management. The teacher skillfully manages the classroom, minimizing disruptions and maximizing instructional time. Transitions between activities are smooth and students remain focused and on task. And finally, creating norms and social contracts emphasizes and supports strong teacher and student relationships. The teacher builds positive relationships with the students, showing genuine interest and care for their well-being. This connection fosters trust and respect, making students more willing to engage and participate. This is the end of part 1. We will have another video, part 2, which is going to be discussing the ideas of creating norms and expectations and social contracts and empowering the student to make good choices. We encourage you to implement the strategies from this video to enhance your classroom management. Thank you for taking the time to view our professional development on demand. See you next time.